The question is whether there is actual negotiation right now or just a sort of a camouflage by the Hamas. We have to take into consideration the fact that Hamas right now aim is mostly to gain time because, first of all, it will enable them to recreate their infrastructure, their facilities, even recruit new terrorists. You just have to pay 150 shekel for a 16-year-old guy and he's in, but you have to train him, you have to doctrinize him, you have to supply him with weaponry, with ammunition. It takes time.
Israel has resumed fighting in Gaza with fresh airstrikes across the Gaza Strip targeting senior Hamas members. We knew, of course, that a return to hostilities was always possible with a weak ceasefire in place and negotiations to release the hostages at an impasse. But now that the fighting has indeed resumed, what do we need to know about it? Well, the strikes, which were coordinated with the Trump administration, come after the U.S. warned Hamas that it would suffer similar blows to the Houthis if it did not release the hostages. Hamas, of course, ignored the warnings. 200 Hamas terrorists were eliminated in the strikes, among them senior Hamas official Atsam Dealis, also known as the King, in the deck of cards of Hamas's most wanted men. Israel says Hamas refused to release the hostages and negotiate an extension to the first phase of the ceasefire deal. Hamas, on the other hand, claims that Israel didn't want to negotiate the second phase of the ceasefire deal as was agreed upon. Meanwhile, hostage families are out on the streets protesting against the resumption in fighting, concerned for the safety of their loved ones. Hostages held captive in the Gaza Strip, both underground and in buildings above ground. My guest today is Oded Ailam, former head of the Counterterrorism Division in the Mossad and now a researcher at the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
My first question to you, Oded, is, in your eyes, what is the motivation for Israel returning to resuming the fighting in Gaza? And is this the right move at this moment amid the negotiations for the hostages?
The question is whether there is actual negotiation right now or just a sort of a camouflage by the Hamas. We have to take into consideration the fact that Hamas right now aim is mostly to gain time. And the reason they want to gain time is because, first of all, it will enable them to recreate their infrastructure, their facilities, even recruit new terrorists. You just have to pay 150 shekel for a 16-year-old guy and he's in, but you have to train him, you have to doctrinize him, you have to supply him with weaponry, with ammunition. It takes time. And also, they are gathering their infrastructures was severely hit by the Israeli invasion into Gaza. For instance, they're using a lot of derbies of ammunition that hadn't been exploded in order to recreate bombs and all sorts of facilities like this. But this is on the level of I would say, the military engagement with Israel. But there is another level, another layer towards why they wish to have some sort of never-ending negotiations with Israel. They realize at that point that they are in fact pretty much isolated. Their main ally, which is Iran, is pretty much preoccupied with some sort of engagement with the Americans. We saw Trump is clarified very out loud and very outspoken exactly their accountability for what is happening with the Houthis and what is happening now. They are aware of I wouldn't say carte blanche, but they are aware of the complete new approach of this administration, which allow Israel to expand the limits of engagement. And they lost their ally like the Hezbollah. The Houthis can fire from 1, 2, 3 missiles that will wake up the Tel Aviv people at night, but not more than that.
Right.
And they're pretty much isolated, even within the Arab world. We saw the Arab League announcement. We saw the Egyptians announcement. They're not stating clearly that Hamas will not be some sort of sovereignty after...
Right, there's no consensus within the Arab League itself
Right.
on the future of Hamas, which
Right.
gives it the opportunity to potentially stay in power or have some sort of influence still
Right.
in Gaza, and the opportunity to recreate October 7th again and again, as it has promised.
Absolutely, you're right. There's no consensus right now. It's something new, by the way, because if you remember, there was some sort of consensus before. After Trump initiation and his suggestion of transferring the Gaza people out of Gaza, it caused a turmoil in the Arab states, and they had to come out with some sort of positive, proactive offer by themselves. And right now, the Hamas believes that as long as they sustain their power and the grip on Gaza, there's a more chance of cut and paste of the Hezbollah into Gaza. And what I mean by cut and paste, they realize they're realistic people. They're not stupid. They realize there's no way for reconciliation or rebuilding of Gaza if Hamas is in power, in fact. But what I think is the best and optimal way is to actually adopt the Hezbollah way, which means, okay, we're not going to be the government, we're not going to take care of the sewer, we're not going to take care of the education, but we are going to maintain our military force, and we are going to be a political party in whatever constellation there will be in Gaza. And this is what they aspire right now. And this is why they need time. They need time to establish that. And they want to prolong the negotiation, and they understand that the best playing cards are the hostages. Absolutely. And there's no chance on earth that they will release all of them in any sort of agreement whatsoever. So I think many Israelis are mistaken to think that, okay, if let's actually agree to all of the Hamas demands, free whatever they want from the Israeli jail, withdraw to the 6th of the October borders, get all our hostages back, and then we can resume the fighting. We can do whatever we want. This is a mistake, because Hamas are not stupid. They know that as well. They know that Israeli is declaring it very loud, clear, that they will not settle for that. So the Hamas will always maintain few hostages as a playing cards. And this is something that we have to realize, we have to understand, and it should really dictate the Israeli approach. So what's going to happen right now is probably, and most probably, but you know, probability in the Middle East is something which is completely unpredictable. But
because it's a completely different playing field now. We
Right.
have shifts in both Israel's military, the U.S. administration. This round of fighting definitely feels different than previous ones. And I guess that's my next question. Is this the beginning of the end of Hamas? Is it just another quick round of fighting to continue negotiations, to bring Hamas to the negotiation table?
I think on a tactical level, what Israel is aspiring right now is to bring back Hamas to the negotiating table in order to release as much as possible Israeli hostages, that Hamas is holding and trying to pressure the Hamas to remove their new demands and to move forward towards the Israeli demand. This is on the tactical level, okay? And as long as we maintain that, there is a good chance that it will happen. I'm not saying that Hamas will release all the hostages or many of them. No, that will not happen. But they will release more than they wished and more than they actually wish to keep for the next phase. So this is on the tactical level right now, the pressure that they are putting. But on the overall strategy, I must say that I see no other alternative than conquering and capturing all of Gaza until the last centimeter and establishing some sort of military rule in Gaza for a certain period that will enable Israel to inflict the optimum damage on the Hamas military capabilities, and as well as diminishing Hamas' grip on the Gaza people.
So you're saying redeploying Israeli troops to the Gaza Strip and maintaining somewhat of a temporary control on the Strip until a more permanent solution is found. Does that include also control of the Philadelphia corridor? Because that was agreed upon in the first deal, right? That the military would withdraw from that corridor.
Absolutely. I think whatever was agreed is irrelevant right now because the Hamas had breached the agreement, and we don't have to stick to any sort of a previous agreement that was initiated by the Biden administration and under the Biden restraints. We are in a different ballgame right now, and we have to create a new version of our strategy.
Israel says Hamas refused to release the hostages and negotiate negotiate an extension to the first phase of the deal. Hamas, on the other hand, is claiming that Israel didn't want to negotiate the second phase of the deal as was agreed upon. I'm curious to hear from you, given your background in the Mossad, what really is happening behind closed doors?
What is happening behind closed doors is, first of all, we don't have direct negotiation with Hamas. We have to remember that. We are talking mainly with the intermediators, which are
Qatar,
Egypt, and mostly the Americans. Okay? So it is not any sort of negotiation that you can say, okay, we're sitting on a round table, throwing suggestions, feedback and so on. That it doesn't work that way. And take into consideration the fact that the Hamas leadership is in Gaza. The Hamas leadership is in fact disengaged themselves from the external leadership that is in Qatar. Mashal, Abu Marzouk, and all of the people there have no influence on the Gaza leadership right now. And they are sort of, I would say, pigeon who carry messages from time to time. Khalil al-Haya, who is doing most of the work and going back and forth. And so right now, the actual negotiation is being conducted between Israel and the American administration. This is the actual administration.
Which makes things even more difficult.
Right. A lot more difficult.
Some former hostages have described some of the scariest moments in captivity was hearing bombings and fearing dying in an Israeli airstrike. Now, does the Israeli military truly have clear intelligence of where the hostages are being held as they claim to do so?
First of all, I'm not anymore inside this Israeli intelligence. I'm not that familiar with all of the details and the nitty-gritty. But in general speaking, I can say that Israel has a pretty good idea of where the hostages are being held on, let's say, on a general basis. We don't know precisely. And I can actually identify with the what the hostages were saying. They probably were terrified by the fact. But I see no alternative. Look, on the 27th of August, they actually murdered 6 of our hostages, not because the Israelis were, just a moment away from releasing them. No, we were in the area, and they initiated a brutal murder of our hostages. And so I don't see the fact that we are conducting some sort of a military action that will drive the Hamas to repeat this sort of murder. No, they will do it whenever they think it serves their purposes, and it doesn't have to be attached to an Israeli invasion. Having said that, sure, Israeli invasion risks the life of Hamas, but also if they are stuck in those tunnels for months, starved, beaten, tortured, it also risks the life of the Hamas. So if we weigh the consequences, I don't know if this is more hazardous and this is more risky to their life than a military invasion.
Given your background in the Mossad, tell us a little bit about the role that security agency, that intelligence agency plays in these negotiations in front of Qatar, Egypt, the United States, as you mentioned.
The role of the Mossad was very active until recently, when the chief of the Mossad was taking active part in the negotiations itself. He was a key leader in the negotiations. So the Mossad naturally had to support the negotiations with providing intelligence, providing background, providing know-how, and things like that. I cannot go into details naturally, but you can be sure that all these kind of negotiations are supported by intelligence in order to enhance the capability of the intermediators achieving an optimal solution.
While we're on the topic of these hostage negotiations and the role that intelligence plays, the big role that it plays, I want to talk to you about Oded Ailam, the head of the Shin Bet, Israel's internal security agency. Netanyahu has decided to fire Bar, citing a lack of trust. Now, while a majority of Israelis do want Bar removed due to his, failures on October 7th, they're divided on Netanyahu's decision himself to be able to dismiss him and potentially appoint someone that's more aligned with him. I'm curious to hear from you, what do you make of that decision to fire the head of the Shin Bet while he's directly involved in the negotiations to release the hostages?
This is a tricky question. First of all, I must say, I don't know Bar personally. He's much younger than I, and I'm from the old guys and the dinosaurs. He's more of he was an egg when I was, but I absolutely know that he is a patriot. He had good intentions. He cares about the faith of Israel. The Shin Bet had suffered tremendous blow on the 7th of October, which was the outcome of a long process of change in the atmosphere within the Shin Bet regarding technology versus the human factor. And I won't go into the details. It didn't start with Bar. It was with his Agaman and even if his previous. But what is crucial for the Shin Bet and any sort of intelligence agency is to function in the best way is the intimate connection with the captain of the ship, which is the prime minister. This is essential for any sort of intelligence agency. Now, if there is such a rift and such a disbelief between the decision maker, which is the prime minister, and the director of the Shabak, one of them has to go. And the only way to remove prime minister in the constitutional way in Israel is, election. So actually there is no alternative, but he had to go. My personal point of view, he should have done it long time before, resign. Because it's not just saying I'm responsible for the 7th of October and when the time comes, I'll go. No, responsibility has to be connected with kinetic, with actual doing, which is not just plain words that we can juggle like balls in the air. If you are responsible, there is a consequence to responsibility, and he had to resign long time ago. He didn't do it from his own personal or purpose or whatever, and I think there is actually no alternative but to fire him if it comes to a point where there's such a gap, a rift, and between the prime minister and the head of Shabak.
It's impossible to talk about Ronen Bar's firing and the timing of it, right? When we're in the middle of this this current investigation into Qatargate, the Shin Bet's investigation of Netanyahu close aides potentially working for Qatar, who represents Hamas in the middle of a war. I'm curious to hear your thoughts on that.
If it's true, and I don't know, I don't have any details regarding this Qatar Gate, what is called in the press. But if it's true, it's a severe breach in the security of Israel. It's almost unthinkable. I think if the Qatari had managed to infiltrate the top advisors of Netanyahu, the top influencer on Netanyahu, and recruit them as an asset, I salute them as a.
Yeah, we'll certainly have succeeded in infiltrating both American universities and the Israeli government.
Right. I salute them. If I was the Qatari, I would give a medal to the case officer who actually ran this operation. But I don't know. We don't know. It has to be investigated. It has to be. It's a very, very severe event that we have to investigate. I don't see a real connection between Ronen Bar dismissal and this event, because it's an ongoing investigation which is not related personally to Ronen Bar. The prosecution, the police, the certain people within the Shabak who are investigating this matter, and from knowing those people, they are unbiased. They will not be influenced by the fact that this guy is gone and this guy is coming into power. So I don't see right now the relevance of the timing.
As we're speaking, Oded, there are thousands of protesters on the streets of Jerusalem blocking the entrance.
I came with them on a train.
I know, same. And those protesters claim that Netanyahu decided to return to fighting in Gaza for political reasons, mainly to garner support from his right-wing coalition in order to pass the state budget, which in Israel, failure to do so can topple a coalition and lead to elections. I'm curious to hear what your take on that is.
I'm trying to avoid with my comments and with my perspective any sort of political view or any sort of taking side regarding that. Okay, so I will not answer your question directly, but I would just mention a few things. I don't know what are the motives of the political motives of Netanyahu. I cannot rule out that he has internal political motives. Kissinger once, you remember Kissinger, once said, Israel has no foreign policy, only internal policy. And surely those motivations and those, it's a fact, any politician, whatever you in position you are in, okay? I cannot say, no, he is completely detached from any psychological, political, that influence him in a way that he can detach himself completely regarding that. I cannot say that. But I can just look at the outcome of what is right now going in Gaza, and I think it's the right move. I don't care what are the motives. I don't care. I judge only what I see.
Oded, my final question to you is, where do we go from here? What do you think will be the next step in the grand scheme of things when it comes to the future of Gaza, when it comes to the hostage negotiations? What do you foresee taking place in the next weeks, months, when it comes to bringing home these hostages?
It's hard to tell, and it's hard to predict. And I saw all those commentators on television expressing just 2 weeks ago, there's no chance that Trump will allow Israel to resume the military offensive in Gaza. You don't know Trump. He is the guy who just wants to make peace. He just wants to win the Nobel Prize, and he will not let Israel in any way enter a new phase that involves military aggression or military offensive. And here we are. Here we are today, after yesterday, and we're expecting more of it right now, and it's completely a completely different direction. Okay?
Uncharted territory.
Uncharted territory. Listen, nobody have ever threatened Iran like he did. Nobody. So we are in a completely, as you say, uncharted territory, and so it will be very, very difficult to predict what is going to be the outcome. I will just say, and I want to be very, very cautious when I'm saying it, there is a chance that this military operation, and if we elevate it more into a ground operation, will bring the Hamas to the negotiation table under different circumstances, with a different stand. It will soften the Hamas attitude and his stubbornness in the negotiation table, and there is a chance that we might rescue more hostages than he was initially willing to give in that phase. As I said before, I think the final resolution and the final goal should be that Israel should occupy Gaza totally and hold Gaza for as long as it takes in order to initiate the goals of the war.
Oded Ailam, thank you very much for your insight today on this uncharted territory in what has become a never-ending war, which we have absolutely no end in sight of where we're going and how we'll get there. Thank you.
Thank you.